7, 6. Okay. I think we're in. Good to go. Welcome, everybody. I'm sure some of us are just transitioning sessions. This is returning third here, heading home. Last 2 sessions. Got 2 very important guests. This is a very important conversation as well. As we know, the SDR tech stack underpins every area of SDR workflow, every part of the business, and in most cases, to people, data, process, all of that. So really important discussion, whether you're building out a new stack with a new SDR team or you've inherited a team and a tech stack associated with that. This is going to be a highly relevant conversation. I'm going to jump to introductions real quick. First, I'm going to introduce Daniel Lewis. He's the Director of Revenue Operations at Sales Intel. Daniel, want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so as the Director of Revenue for Sales Intel, I manage the entire revenue stack, our marketing automation system, Salesforce, as well as our CS system. And prior to being the Director of Revenue Ops, I started out as an SDR. I managed SDR teams, then moved into Sales Ops, and now I am managing everything in the revenue stack.
Very good. Awesome. Well, you have obviously a very relevant background conversation and for, I'm sure, in your role. And it's good to see that, actually. We talk a lot about in the last couple of sessions about career pathing and where SDRs go in the business. And so that ties in really well with that. Next up, Andrew Gillespie, Senior Manager of the Product Expert Team at Hubspot. Really excited to have you here, Andrew. You want to tell us a little about your role and what you do?
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks, Derek. And hey, everybody. My name is Andrew Godlewski. I've been a member of HubSpot since 2015. I joined as a customer success manager, really helping our customers to develop out their inbound marketing and sales strategies and really using the tools in HubSpot to drive those forward. After spending some years as a CSM, I moved over to the product or the support leadership side of things, and I now run our product expert organization. So the product expert team that I currently run sort of serves this dual function at HubSpot of advanced troubleshooting, like second tier support, and also product advocacy in really helping to identify and remove friction from the customer experience.
Very good. Very good. Well, you offer a unique perspective for the team. So I'm really excited to hear your input on some of the questions that we have lined up for you guys. And with that, I do want to frame the discussion around a particular framework that we focus on at Tenbound, and that's identify, stage, engage as an SDR workflow. And so we want to think about what we're optimizing for when we're building a tech stack, whether it's timing of outreach, email call effectiveness, learning from our outreach and gathering insights. There's a lot of things that we want to prioritize and think about what we're optimizing for. But in terms of the SDR workflow, which we're all here to focus on today, identifying new leads and then target accounts and plays to run, staging accounts and finding the right people and the contact information, doing the relevant research so we can have relevant outreach, and then the engagement piece where we're actually engaging with people, coordinating meetings, and doing all the work of actually following up, etc. So with that said, Daniel, I want to ask you a quick question first off. What are the most essential components of an SDR tech stack?
Geez, there's really 3 things that come to mind off the top of my head. First is a CRM. You need a way to organize everything for the organization, the accounts, contacts, the pipeline, and be able to run reports and metrics for the executive team and the managers. Then you need an sales acceleration or a cadence tool. It's for the frontline reps and the managers to be able to organize their piece of the territory and be able to manage all the individual touch points, calls, emails, and LinkedIn and other outreach pieces throughout that entire outreach sequence or cadence. And the last one, you need data. You got to fill your pipeline with data. And of course, the fastest way to get that is through a data solutions provider.
Absolutely. 100% agree. What would you add to that in terms of the framework, in terms of the tech stack? Andrew, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, one thing that I was thinking about with like the SDR framework, and I don't think this is one that you would tack on to the end of it, but sort of one that underpins the entire framework is the ability to analyze. I think that's so important. Daniel just mentioned like data and visualization being like a really big part of the stack that you're building, but you want to have some way to get visibility into, you know, which activities are actually driving revenue from the SDR side of things. Like, how do we close the loop and really understand what's working, what's not working. And another thing that I know like I'm personally like obsessed over and really passionate about is using that data to find, identify, and resolve friction in the customer journey and also in the rep experience, that you can really figure out where you want to prioritize new initiatives that you're putting into place, or new strategies that you might need to implement for your team.
That's excellent. Very holistic there. Daniel, anything around the analyze piece? I know that's probably a big area in your world as well as a data revenue operations person. So what are you doing specifically around data visualization right now?
Yeah, for data visualization, a lot of it's in Salesforce. Salesforce has a lot of rich reporting and dashboarding capabilities, but we're starting to look at the next generation, since Salesforce only does a snapshot of today. You can't see what
Right.
your pipeline looked like 6 months ago or a year ago. And that's where some of the data visualization tools like Tableau and Periscope are two that I've used that are pretty common. But the list can go on and on. We can probably just go on for an hour just listing out all the data visualization tools.
Right. I agree with you. Yeah, Lean Data is another plugin I know is common with a Salesforce deployment in terms of bolstering, data as well. And there's a lot of data tools out there that can bolster the Salesforce dashboards themselves, and add some bolt-on pieces there. But I think Andrew, we had a discussion as well around taking it even larger in terms of business intelligence and what comes out of that. And I think Daniel just mentioned Tableau. What would you echo there in terms of a more holistic view of data management?
Yeah, I think, and I know we're going to talk a little bit later about like integrations and having like one cohesive platform that everything's feeding into. But from a data perspective, I think that's equally important. Like making sure, like for example, at HubSpot we use Looker, which is another one of those tools. Like Daniel said, we could keep talking about them, but we won't. But Looker is really important for us in just being able to piece together what's going on across all different teams, across all of our tools, and how we really put together really what the story is from each of our teams and what our customers are saying and asking for. So, as your team grows and you get larger, I think, making sure that you have a strategy that has data at the center, and that you're using this data to make your decisions and gather insights from that to drive your strategies is really important.
Very good. Very good. And I'll add on that when you tap into those resources, should your organization have a business intelligence arm, there's a level of talent that is brought to the table that you may not have had before, relative to the immediate operations management of the team. So don't be afraid to cross the aisle as you build your ultimate SDR stack and bring in more cross-functional folks to help unify the data and get more holistic views. Now, switching gears a little bit, let's get down to a more tactical view around the world of an SDR. What about scheduling tools? Right now, the whole right now, but the whole focus of SDR is book meetings, right? Most cases, and that's what we're going to do: is meetings, demos, sort of engage. They're going to coordinate. Daniel, what are you guys doing right now around scheduling tools, and what's your take on that?
Yeah, for anyone who couldn't hear you, the question was about scheduling tools. So yeah, the goal of an SDR is to set up a meeting for someone else in most cases. And so scheduling tools are great. We at Sales Intel, we use Outreach and the round robins. That way we can have a good and even distribution of meetings across the different horizontal teams. And we're looking at, as we start to get more complexity in how we organize our sales team, we've also evaluated Chili Piper. There's a lot of other great tools out there, I think, and HubSpot is one of them. That we used HubSpot as well. And Andrew, you could probably talk more about HubSpot meetings.
Yeah, definitely. And I think like the thing that usually comes up first too when we're talking about meetings at HubSpot is just like the why behind that. And like Daniel, you hinted at right there too, is really like how are we removing friction and really like providing an easy interface to set up meetings and integrate with our different calendar apps, so that it makes it easy for a rep to display all the times that are available for both me as the SDR and you as the prospect. So I think that's like something that we really try to do at HubSpot, at least with that, with those tools, at least, is to make that easier and really get reps so that they're not spending all this time going back and forth trying to get something on the books. But yeah, a lot of the features that you usually see come up, and I think some of those tools you mentioned, Daniel, like definitely have those in it, is the, having scheduling links, being able to see embeddable pages on your website, so you can send a prospect directly to a web page where they can book time with you, versus needing to reach back out to you and set up the next meeting. It just kind of like takes a little bit of the friction out of that part of the experience. You want to make sure there's some sort of calendar integration, obviously, so that it ends up on everyone's schedules, and there's nothing more that you need to do there. And then I think something that's interesting, and Daniel, maybe you can talk more about what Chili Piper offers there, but with group meetings, is the ability to set up a meeting with multiple people on your staff, so that it may be that you're scheduling time for an AE as well as an SDR. I think that's an important piece of the functionality that we always want to look for too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because with outreach, it's the ability for the BDRs to book on behalf of the AEs. So the BDR sends out that meeting invite, but it goes right directly onto the AE's calendar. It looks like it came from the AE themselves. And so the AE can manage everything. And that's one of the things that Chili Piper does. It's able to, if there's two potential teams that the BDR is setting up meetings for, they can use one Chili Piper link, and Chili Piper's intelligence does the rest to route it to the correct team and the correct rep on that team.
Boom. I know my audio is a little choppy, guys, so I'm going to minimize my talking here a little bit, but that was great insight. Thank you for that. Daniel, how should a company evaluate and select data services provider?
Well, I think most important is they need to have good coverage in your addressable market. And then after that, then you're looking at the contact data points they have. Make sure the names and titles are correct. They have email that's deliverable. They have mobile numbers or direct dial numbers. And increasingly now we're getting better account data, not only the firmographics, the main number and where they're located, but technographics. What if they use Salesforce and HubSpot, that has a different pitch than if they're using Dynamics and Marketo. And then and it's been around for a while, but it's getting better integrated, is intent data. Who's searching for your product, who's landing on your page, and putting all that into one package. So I think those, if you're looking at the top three, that's it.
Anything you'd add in terms of how acquiring the data or originating data in those terms as well, or partnerships that a vendor might have? I'm sure a lot of companies are evaluating and thinking about who to bolt on in terms of a data services provider, but anything around those areas?
Yeah, because a lot of companies are able to scrape data off the internet, and with great accuracy, especially because a lot of professionals are on LinkedIn. So you can tell who's out there, where they're at, and their title. It gets a little bit more difficult when trying to verify everything else or get a mobile number. And that's where a company that has some first party verification or data sources really comes into play. Or and at this is the case with Sales Intel. We have our own human verifiers. So we have a big research team, well over 1,000 people, who are verifying that data every 90 days. And that's one of our advantages. We've got more first-party data sources for finding mobile numbers and the human verification. But we're not totally unique. Other companies have a good mix of those two as well.
Right. Well, I like your point about the technographics piece as well. That's something that we see in our engagements that's missing often, and SDR teams not leveraging, that are selling technology, not using technographics to help guide their outreach. So definitely for competitive or complementary campaigns, make sure you weigh in on your tech install data. Andrew, let's switch gears a little bit and talk about integrations. What should the audience know or think about in terms of integration, since that's kind of at the heart of making these tech stacks work?
Yeah, definitely. So I think even before talking about integrations, like one of the things, and we talk about this a ton at HubSpot, that we see revenue leaders really challenged with today is like managing these disparate and tangled systems and trying to find ways of really like they're spending a lot of energy in stitching together like what their buyer's journey looks like and where there's different friction points that tend to stall growth. And I think for SDR leaders in particular, like when thinking about integrations, like a connected stack is really something that you want to strive towards, that really stitches together all these different tools and really empowers the team to spend their time doing what they should be doing, right? Which is like qualifying and identifying leads and fueling growth for the business. So I think integrations, like they play a really big role here, but before even going into that, I think one important step is to make sure as a leader, you're doing your due diligence and really evaluating the tools that you have in front of you or that you're potentially bringing on in the future and making sure that those are part of a really cohesive strategy. First and foremost, I think any tool that you bring on really needs to support your sales strategy and your growth strategy and work to remove friction from the buyer's journey. I've talked a lot with HubSpot customers in the past about like this balance between preference and necessity, and really asking yourself, like, do you need these tools in the first place? And trying to avoid this like amalgamation or like a Franken system of disparate tools that just don't talk to each other. Daniel, did you want to say something there? Sorry.
Oh yeah, well, because each time you add a tool, then you have to make sure that it integrates with the rest of the tech stack.
Exactly.
And then a lot of people miss the fact that, or overlook the fact that their existing tech stack might have that, or like high velocity sales can bolt onto salesforce.com, or HubSpot has the Salesforce Sales Pros built in there with a meeting tool. So sometimes someone might go out and get Calendly, not realizing, hey, they already had that capability for free sitting there
Or
on
they
the
might go
desk.
get Sales Loft, and I know there was a question earlier about sales engagement tools. You might get Sales Loft and attach that to your HubSpot, and they may work, they may integrate, but then there's varying levels of integration, and sometimes it's just a basic sync, and there are sometimes limitations. So I would just add that don't just think about the capability, but think about the limitations in mapping integrations. And think about the data journey, right? At the end of the day, that's what these things are doing, are facilitating data flow from one team, one department to the other, for one use case to the other. And so, if the integration is limited, you may want to go with a platform play like what Daniel just recommended with, a HubSpot all-in-one, where you have most of your tools kind of built in. Very good. Well, I think that's a very good point. Now, we've talked about data visualization. We've talked about the scheduling tools. Let's jump to a question. I think that we had some questions in there as well. Do we have any in there that you know of, Amanda? So yeah, what other essential the sequence tools? Andrew, anything else that you use in terms of sequence tools? What do you recommend in terms of cadence tools and that sort of thing using there?
Oh, sorry, Derek, you dropped off a little bit there. I missed that one.
Sequence tools. What else are you using or have used or recommend?
Shoot, sorry, I missed you again. Daniel, did you catch the question there?
Yeah, well, the one that's popped up from Amanda is, what are some examples of the sequence tools we use? And at Sales Intel, we use Outreach. In the past, I've used and set up Sales Loft, and both are awesome tools to use. And we've also used HubSpot Sales Pro at Sales Intel. And each of those tools handles the basics well. Calls, emails, LinkedIn touch points. But then they can do different. They're better suited for different things. And yeah, do you have any thoughts or feedbacks on that?
There's another question: is Sales Intel provide your solution in the EU? Very good.
Yes, we do. So most of our data is based in the U.S., but on request of our customers, we're starting to grow out our data set in EU and Asia. And approaching GDPR requirements, I don't have the specific answer for that, but I know that we can answer that offline for you. If you want to send me a message, Derek, I think that came from Derek Borgman. Yeah, we can answer that question in more detail for you. But we do treat data very seriously as well, because it's also your reputation at stake if you and your sales team's outreach to someone from a list or from contact data you got from us.
I think this is a really important point that someone mentioned. Can you guys hear me okay? Oh, here goes another question. What are some of the email and video software you're familiar with?
Oh man, well, I think Vidyard is the one that most people are familiar with.
Yeah. I was gonna say Vidyard. Loom is another one that I know we're seeing a lot more of.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, email scraping tools are also very helpful. You guys catch that?
Yeah, so email scraping tools are there. I think that's the advantage of going with a data solutions provider. Like we have our own proprietary bounce tool that we run emails through that's more thorough, and then we do human verify that emails work. So we can do. There's a few extra steps that that us and a few of our competitors we do, and it beyond just scraping those emails.
Guys, well, we're running down on time. We want to make up some, but any other questions? Let's jump to look in the Q&A section. I'm not seeing. Here we go. Thank you, Amanda. Model versus it's a long one. That's a very difficult question. That's a lot of contingencies there.
Day.
Man.
Hmm.
Michael, you're putting us on the spot here.
Yeah, you can kind of work backwards from that because most of the time the goals center around phone calls. So you're usually trying to make about 50 to 60 phone calls a day. I think last time I saw some good figures pre-pandemic, it said 55 calls per meeting set. And then that means you're going to need about 40 to 50 people reaching a call step today. And most sequences are going to be about 10 steps. And that means you're probably going to start anywhere from 10 to 20 prospects per day in a sequence so that over time you'll hit about 50 people hitting, one of those probably 3 call steps in that sequence but in aggregate you'll have that 50 a day that you need. But that number varies because everyone's got a different number of sequence steps that they're trying to run people through. Are you doing a high touch sequence? Also, what's the time frame? But that's the guidance we give to our BDRs is 20 prospects per day should be started in a sequence.
The last question is, how do you think about tech ROI? This is a very important one because we know how expensive these stacks are. Daniel, any initial thoughts there, Andrew?
Yeah. Well, I look at it as, can this help my team sell 10% more, 20% more? And some technologies, especially if it's for our inbound team, since our inbound team handles such a high volume of leads and they have a much higher output on their inputs because they're handling all our warm leads. For the inbound team, sometimes we look, is this better than hiring another person? And if that is, because if our 2 reps can now do 50% more each, and I guarantee you almost every technology is less expensive than a full-time employee, then that's your ROI.
Well
yeah,
said,
I like that,
well
Daniel. I was just going to add, like, depending on what the solution is and what like need it's going to either serve to fill, where it's like helping you like grow forward or replacing something, like in your case, Daniel, like, employees that might otherwise need to be scraping data or spending time actually qualifying leads. Like, I think that's the best way to sort of work backwards and then sort of build out what that equation looks like.
Mm-hmm. And with some things, there is no ROI. You need those basic systems, right? If you don't have those basic organization systems, it's going to be chaos. And Ferrari doesn't run without gas, so you've got to have that data.
There it is. There it is. All right. Well, we're at time. Thank you guys so much. Make sure you check out our market map and vendor directory at tenbound.com. We have about 20 categories and hundreds of technology vendors that are helping drive success around sales development. Our next session is the Sales Dev Tech Landscape Explained, how SDRs can excel using the latest tools with Sean Dyer, the Director of Sales Development for Zoom Info. Thanks for joining.
Thanks for having us, Derek.